here in a very nice home studio in a very nice
Yeah.
town in Connecticut, and all of that comes with. My bills are paid.
Yeah.
I don't have a migrant crisis in my town. I don't have opioids ravaging my town. I have two cars.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I have the luxury of worrying about democracy
Hmm.
and women's reproductive rights. When your basic needs aren't met, you can't get to that next level. You're not thinking about other people's girls
Hmm.
and their rights, thinking about your family. And can I put gas in the car this week?
Yeah.
I don't believe that we should look down on people who are just thinking about their basic needs. I get that. I have the luxury, and it will be my job to tell you why democracy is important and
Hmm.
women's rights are important. I'll do that.
Yeah.
But I can only do so much if you're not able to buy food.
Hello and welcome to Eric McElroy's American Exchange with me, Eric McElroy. Well, we're back again. A little bit more time has gone past since the election, so it's sinking in, and it's just like 2016 to 2020. It's chaos and madness and a parade of very interesting nominees to the cabinet for our future president, Donald Trump, because, we accept the results of free and fair elections. It's been interesting to see the fallout from the last few weeks. The idea of this red wave mandate, I think, is starting to diminish. And I think maybe Trump has overplayed his hand with some of his nominees. I mean, I'm sure some of the shit show will get through, but maybe not all of the ones. We've already gone through Matt Gaetz. So that's tick a win a little bit. But we are back this week for one of our favorite guests, SE Cupp. It's always a delight to talk to SE, especially because of her show Battleground, which she was doing for 4 months in the run up to the election. She was one of the people that I was messaging saying, "What do you think is going to happen? Do you think Kamala's going to win? Do you think Trump's going to win?" And she said correctly, "It's going to be close," and wasn't willing to put her money either side. And her show, we talk about it in the podcast. She really broke through the media bubble and talked to real people about what their real concerns were. And she genuinely believes, in talking to those people over a period of 4 months, that it really was the economy stupid and that there was just no way that the Biden Harris legacy could get past that, and that Trump was the party of change, even though that change is no good in both of our opinions. Um, Essie is someone you can catch on CNN. She has a columnist, which from the UK you can read in the Chicago Sun-Times, and also other newspapers are available. She also has a brand new or newish podcast. I don't know how brand new it is now, called Off the Cup, where she talks to media people, celebrities, and others from around the US about everything but politics, about their lives, about mental health, and other issues. So if you're looking for a break from politics, which I probably need, definitely check out Off the Cup as well. It's great to have SE back. Please enjoy SE Cupp. Ooh, and if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all that YouTube stuff you need to do. The channel's coming along nicely, so it'd be great to have more people know about it and see our videos, and you can share them as well, because it's nice to watch as well as listen. That's what I like to do for a lot of my podcasts. So please do that. And without any further ado, here is Essie. I'm very, very excited to speak to one of our favorites here at the podcast, and one of the people that, through this project, I've gotten to know over the last few years, is one of my favorite people to chat to about all things, SE Cupp. First thing I want to ask you is, I know we've never met in person, but I'm thinking maybe as you and I, as people who've spoken out against the former and future president, maybe we should meet up in Mar-a-Lago and bend a knee. What do you think? Is
I
it
don't
time to
know
go
that I'm
kiss the
welcome
ring?
there. Um, Nor would I go and kiss the ring.
No, you don't want to follow. I mean, I
No.
would imagine most people who watch this would know about Joe Scarborough and Mika from Morning Joe, two prominent people who've spoken out against Trump for 7 years. And in less than 2 weeks, they've gone crawling back to Trump.
Well, people forget that in 2016, they were very friendly with him as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of people think they helped him get elected the first time.
Yeah.
And yes, then they spent 7 years critiquing him, which is what journalists do. What journalists don't do is then go and try to meet with their subject, um, and ask for like diplomatic relations. That is not our job. It is not our job to be liked. It is not our job to go to White House Christmas parties.
Hmm.
That's not our job. Our job is to hold powerful people accountable. And while I'm not mad at the idea that like they want a reset, that's okay. But if the idea is I'm afraid
Hmm.
of what you're going to do to me, listen, that is the job. I've gotten swatted at my house. I've gotten death threats to my family. It
Hmm.
shouldn't be this way,
Yeah.
but this is the job. And you don't go and ask for leniency or favors with some kind of subliminal messaging of later coverage in exchange. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
what was promised, but the idea of going and saying, I want to reset, the idea is I'm gonna cover you differently.
Hmm.
I don't like that. And I like both Joe and Mika. I know them personally, but I don't
I was
like
gonna
that.
say, because what I've learned talking to you is you know everyone, which is why I like having you.
Tell everyone, Eric, I know everyone.
I mean, I was the last piece of that puzzle. Once we connected, then that was it.
Yes, now I truly know
The,
everyone.
the puzzle was solved. Um, so I mean, knowing them personally and knowing that they've done this, I mean, I'm guessing. Do they acknowledge? And you may not want to speak about this if it's been private, but do you think that they felt guilty about the way they covered Trump in 2016?
No, I think they were genuinely afraid
In
of
2016, they were afraid when they were covering when they were
oh,
positive. Sorry, when they but before they turned when they were giving him lots of coverage and speaking to him and treating him like this mate and all these things. Do so they regretted that, didn't they?
I don't know that they regretted getting that access. I think they were chastened by viewers.
Hmm.
And I think they realized, okay, if we're going to do 4 years of this, I don't think they thought he'd get elected. If we're going to do 4 years of this, we've got to be much more critical to
Yeah,
retain our viewers.
on the most
And
left wing cable channel.
well, exactly. And look, everyone performs for their viewers. That's smart. Um, but just speaking from personal experience, and this is not an indictment against anyone, but my personal experiences, I have not changed one bit, not one single bit.
Yeah.
And I don't morph into different people based on where I am. And I've worked at all the networks, all of them. Um, that's how I can sleep at night and know no matter what happens, no matter if no one's listening, if no one cares what I have to say, which is what
Hmm.
it feels like these days, and that's fine. At least I know I said what I believe in.
Yeah.
I can't do a transactional journalism. It's
Hmm.
not in me. It's not how I was brought up. And in journalism, I mean. Um, so I don't know. I just can't do that. But look, lots of people do. Lots of people practice a transactional journalism. And I think that is why trust in journalism has eroded.
Well, I think I agree. I mean, it does. I guess it does. I guess our because I'm fairly, I've always tried to not just be in the left wing bubble. Now, for the purposes of this podcast, especially in the run up to this election, I purposely chose not to have any outright Trump supporters on.
Mhm.
And in the past, I actually had a podcast with a Republican in the UK, a broadcaster that's here, in the early days of Trump. And we had a good sense of humor together. We had a good rapport together, and we would debate things together. But it's gotten to the point where this was before the insurrection and before all the lies and before the other stuff that's happened and all of it. And I thought, should I do that? Why bring someone on who I know I'm going to just spend the entire time and they're going to be lying to me the whole time? So what
That's
am
the
I
thing.
gaining from that? And
It's
I'm
not
not a
a difference
journalist.
of
I'm a
opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that would be fine. And we have this crisis in cable news of wanting to bring on alternate views and have a
Yeah.
balanced representation of views. But the people in the Trump orbit, and I'm not talking about all Republicans or all
Yeah.
conservatives, but people in Trump's orbit tend to lie on
Constantly
television.
about
And then you
everything.
do spend the entire segment fact checking or being gaslit. Um, or lighting your hair on fire because you're just being lied to. And that's very frustrating. And you don't want to platform that. But
Mm.
it is the rub because you do want to invite Trump representatives, people
Yeah.
who agree with Trump and want what Trump is selling. You want to have those people on. But I covered this election differently this year. I had a
Hmm.
show called Battleground. I moved to a swing state for four
Hmm.
months, Pennsylvania. And all I did for 6 months was talk to swing state voters in the seven swing states and reporters who covered their states. And this was a way of getting that point of view
Mm.
on television and having voters in their own words or a
Yeah.
reporter saying, here's what voters in Eau Claire, Wisconsin are telling us is important to them.
Hmm.
So I checked that box. I accomplished that in that format of a show where that Trump's viewpoint was very well represented without lying
Right.
and gaslighting, just people in their own words telling me what was bothering them. So there's a way to do it, but you have to really invest in like local news and local coverage to do that and not just sit from a perch in Washington or New York.
Yeah. And local news and local coverage is famously, under attack and under siege and disappearing in America.
Dying. Yeah.
Um, well, that I mean, that's because well, I was messaging, my limited contact pool, right before the election, and you were one of the people I messaged and was like, because again, I'm over here. That's the whole idea of this podcast
Yeah.
is trying to figure out what the fuck is going on,
Uh-huh.
and some of these people that I were messaging were campaigning for Harris. I can't remember if I had messaged any other journalists, but you came back the most cautious of everyone because I thought she was going to win.
Hmm.
I thought, and I was in Pennsylvania actually for a wedding. I was there for 3 days right before the election.
Yeah.
And so I got a sense, I haven't been in the US pre-election for a long time. So it did seem like, because it was a wedding, people coming together from all over the country. I was desperate to talk about politics, and I could tell
Uh-huh.
nobody wanted to. I, and
Yeah.
I could feel fear, like nervousness and fear. So I don't know if
Yeah.
that's a normal vibe or not now, but um, it, it's I you were spot on, and maybe that's because of the unique position you were in,
Yeah.
talking to
I was
real
not
people.
surprised. I was disappointed, but I
Yeah.
was not surprised because I had been hearing from voters for 6 months telling me these are the three things that we're most worried about: the economy, crime, and immigration. And it's not like we didn't hear from voters on abortion and democracy and other issues that would inure to Kamala Harris's benefit, but the overarching, overwhelming consensus from all seven
Mm.
swing states was economy, crime, immigration. Those three issues definitely favored Trump. And listen, these weren't people going to Trump rallies. That's not
Yeah.
where we found voters. We found them in their communities, outside of their school or their grocery store, the town square. Um, and these were normal people, and they were not moved by a lot of the things that mainstream media was covering. They did not care that Trump was saying migrants are eating pets in Springfield, Ohio. They didn't care. They didn't believe it. That did not matter to them. And a lot of the fear mongering from the left didn't filter down to them either. That
Mm.
Madison Square Garden gross rally that we thought
Yeah.
was, might be determinative didn't make it to them either. They didn't care. That wasn't putting food on their table. So I wasn't surprised because people
Mm.
spoke very honestly about what was bothering them. And I think, unfortunately, and I'd been saying this for like 3 years, Democrats were telling them they were wrong about their feelings.
Mm.
Democrats were saying the economy's great. The economy's strong as hell. You might not feel it yet because of lagging indicators.
Yeah.
Who the fuck cares about lagging indicators? That doesn't put food on the table either.
I love
Um,
me some leg and indicators, Essie.
Lagging indicators, right?
I love it.
Sexy stuff. Or you're safe. Crime is down. Listen, I'm a woman walking through the world 45 years now. I know when I feel safe in a city and when I don't. And I
Mm.
move between three major cities all year long: Washington, New York, and Philadelphia. I do not feel as safe as I did. I don't care what the numbers are. And actually, the numbers were revised to show crime is up. No
Mm.
one no one bothered to correct that record, but you can't tell someone you're actually safe when we feel unsafe. And same for immigration. Democrats said there's no crisis
Yeah.
for years. So voters don't like to be lied to. They don't like to be told you're wrong about how you feel. They just weren't getting it. And I think Kamala Harris ran a terrific campaign.
Mm.
Terrific. And I voted for her, but she didn't get it either. She was not getting where people were.
Well, I also think that the US is so big and so vast, and the media environment is so hard to penetrate. It
Yeah,
shows why you cannot run a campaign in the US in 3 months like we do in the UK, or they do it here in
that's true
6
too.
weeks. And Trump ran for president for 2 fucking years
That's true.
and was ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And even though the Democrats rallied around Kamala, I do think that people, especially people I've talked to, that weren't sold on her, they did buy into the thing. It wasn't democratic that she took over the way she did, and then you can argue about, well, technically, according to the rules of the Democratic National Committee, it was absolutely fine that she took over the way that she did. But it's like, well, should they just? It was a double, it was a switch, it was a switcheroo, it was a trick. Um, so I think not winning fairly in a primary, not she didn't take it unfairly, but not having a full primary process, but that late in the game, they had to just jump on someone. They couldn't have had a primary in August.
Well, he shouldn't have run again. And I voted for him in 2020 with the explicit promise that he would not run again.
Yeah.
Um, had he telegraphed that early and allowed for an actual primary process, we could have gotten a different result. But I also have to tell you, I didn't hear from a single voter who said, I'm not voting for Kamala because there was no democratic process or primary.
Yeah.
That wasn't moving people either. Like, I get if she had had a longer campaign, that could have helped,
Mm.
but only if she was going to change her messaging. And there's a third part of this. There's the candidate, there's the messaging. The third part of this is policy.
Mm.
And that's the hardest thing for any party to reconcile. And I speak from experience having done the Republican autopsy in 2012. Examining your own policies is really painful.
Mm.
And it's really difficult to admit when a policy doesn't work because it's a chink in your whole armor,
Yeah.
right? You feel, well, gosh, if we got this policy wrong, what are we selling and who are we? But the Democrats were working with bad policy. And I heard that from a lot of Democrat operatives who are like, what can we fucking do? Like
Mm.
we can't do anything about inflation in time.
Yeah.
Um, they weren't closing the border. And there's a lot of soft on crime policy across all of the states that has resulted in Democratic mayors and AGs of states
Mm.
getting voted out.
Yeah.
So some of this is policy. And unless Kamala was going to change the messaging and the policy, I'm not sure a longer campaign season would have done it either. There was a nostalgia for the way we felt
Mm.
4 years ago. And that's bananas to me
Yeah.
because of the way I
Hey.
felt 4 years ago with the chaos and the insanity and the bigotry and all the reasons I don't vote for him ever. But the nostalgia was for I could afford stuff 4 years ago. I didn't have a migrant crisis in my town 4 years
Mm.
ago. I didn't feel unsafe 4 years ago. And that's how people felt. And Politics 101 is to meet people where they feel.
Yeah. Or to get the message that you're meeting them where they are, which
Yeah.
I mean, the Republicans always beat Democrats on messaging, I would say, in general, because they are relentless, they stay on topic, and they don't care about the truth. And
Well, they
and
lie, which is
yeah,
exactly what you just said. Yeah. I was going to say
I,
they lie and realize you just said that. But yes,
but
Republicans always go too far. They
mm,
home in on the idea, the
yeah,
problem, and they are correct in identifying the problem. And this is mostly Republicans under Trump. This
yeah,
isn't
yeah,
something we've always done, but certainly under Trump. They take the problem and then they explode it and exacerbate it. And now migrants are eating your pets in your
yeah,
town, right? They go to cartoonish exaggeration to foment your fear instead of tamping down your fear.
yeah,
They exacerbate your fear and then they present you with a boogeyman, someone to be afraid of and mad at. And listen, that works. It's
mm,
lamentable, but it works. Democrats don't do that. Democrats will tell you the problem isn't real, and that's its own problem. But yeah, Republicans go way too far and get people hurt. Um, you know, and incite violence in some
Yeah.
cases and pit American against American, and tell you that's who to be mad at. Go get them.
Yeah.
It's really dangerous and gross and divisive, but it works.
And so I was speaking to somebody who's on right wing media here, and I want to talk to you about that a little bit later. Who is very much on the anti-trans train, and
Mm.
he the first thing he said to me was that people's pushback against trans is what won the election. That was their chief concern in the swing states,
No,
and I
no,
I haven't seen that as
nope.
he's someone who likes to selectively. He might have seen one suggestion of that. I
Yeah.
think the hammering of the anti-trans issue and the way that that infamous ad that if you're a political geek, I'm sure you've seen, where Kamala was said to be promoting giving transitions in prison, but that was just she was just following the law. But of course, that part wasn't in a 30-second ad. That's the boogeyman in this case. I think this year's
Yeah.
election was well, it was obviously always it's the immigrants and the trans people.
Mm.
But you don't did you I mean that fear factor worked, I think, because the democratic message on trans support, I think, is quite muddy. Would you agree on that?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, the Democrats when they get asked about trans issues and like they get cornered into this gotcha question of what is a woman, and then
Uh-huh.
Republicans use this as a wedge issue of keeping my girl safe and all
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. The Democrats haven't been very effective messaging back against that, have they?
Again, this is a policy issue.
Yeah.
For many people, a majority of Americans do not agree that biological males should face biological females in sports.
Yeah.
A vast majority, I think it's at 70%. A vast majority of Americans do not believe that children should get gender reaffirming surgery.
Mhm.
There are other things that a majority of Americans do support: trans rights, um, uh, trans bathrooms,
Yeah.
uh, rights. They are supportive of that. But there's some of this that doesn't make sense to a lot of people. And when
Mhm.
Democrats say, well, it's just because you're a bigot, well, that doesn't go over well. It doesn't make sense to a lot of people that girls should face boys in school, in sports. That doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. And it's not because you're a bigot, it's because you love your girls. And it's not
Mm.
fair to your girls. So there's some common sense to this that I think a majority of the country is just like, what you're saying about pronouns or sports or whatever does not make sense to me.
Mm.
That's not their fault. It doesn't make sense. And listen, I've been an LGBTQ advocate since I was a kid
Yeah.
because I was basically grew up in a gay community in ballet. Um, and I have learned a lot about how you progress on these issues. It's not at the barrel of a gun. It is
Mm.
not by yelling at people and telling them, get here or you're a bigot.
Yeah.
It's not. It's when people meet people. Everyone knows a gay person now.
Hmm.
I don't know that everyone knows a trans person now. I have many trans friends. I don't think that's representative. I don't think
Yeah.
that's common. When people meet these people and get to understand they're just like you and me, and they just want to live in their world and their life with respect and dignity, that's when change happens. And it's not that policy can't get ahead, it can, but you're
Mm.
not going to change people's minds by talking down to them and dismissing them as bigots. So there was some of that going on, but like we've said, Republicans go to the extremes with issues, and now they'll
Yeah.
use it as a wedge. And you saw probably yesterday, um, one of our Congresswomen, Nancy Mace, get up on TV where she loves to be
Mm.
and make this big pitch to ban the one and only trans congressperson now from using the bathroom that she wants to use.
Yeah.
This is not an issue. Every member of Congress has a private bathroom. And there are unisex bathrooms all over every Capitol Hill building. This is not a
Oh
real problem, but she
God.
wants to make it a problem to make a point. And for Republicans, the cruelty has become the point. The cruelty is what they want people to know.
And that's where I see the messaging battle for Democrats and for liberals and for people who want to speak on their behalf is
Mm.
that the trans. So I was having a debate with this person who was like, trans women are men, and I was like, okay, well, regardless of any of that, getting into that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I mean, I'm looking at an issue because I have a daughter, I have a wife, and what is
Mhm.
what's gonna affect and impact their lives more?
Yeah.
The sexual assault of women by trans women in the bathroom, which is not happening,
No.
or is it going to be the fact that in half of the states, or nearly half the states, my daughter, if she lived there, could get raped and be forced to carry the baby? That
Yeah.
seems to be a bigger problem. That's
Sure.
what I'm worried about. And but they've effectively managed to boil it, ignore that and focus on this imaginary issue that is on 0.5% of the population.
Yeah.
But the messaging for that is so difficult and complex and layered, and then they pull the rug out from us again. It's just
Yeah.
infuriating.
Well, again, I mean, I think to a large extent, and I was saying this about Tim Walz in Minnesota.
Hmm.
Minnesota has very um progressive trans laws, very
Mm-hmm.
and deeply unpopular in the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Um, there's some policy that does not help Democrats because it's unpopular. Again, there's policy that is popular too.
Yeah.
But when you have to message policy that's unpopular, there's no real, I mean, it's really hard to do that. And you saw Trump and Republicans struggle with that on abortion.
Hmm.
They
Right.
had
They're on
bad
the other side.
policy that Trump tried to distance himself from while at the same time owning it, right? Like, I'm the reason Roe v. Wade was overturned, but also 6 weeks is too restrictive. But also, I'm going to leave it up to the states. But also, I mean, there was so much mixed messaging on it. They were very lucky that abortion was not a bigger issue to most Americans. They're very
Yeah.
lucky because they could not effectively message that issue either, because where Republicans are on abortion is also deeply unpopular,
Yeah.
even in red states. And you're seeing red states reject um, these abortion restrictions
Yeah.
all over the country, Kansas to Ohio to Texas. So they got lucky with that because if
Hmm.
abortion had been as important to people as it had been in the midterms, I think Republicans would have lost.
Yeah. I mean, the dissidence between voting to protect your abortion rights in some of these states and then not voting for the party that's going to fight to continue to protect your abortion rights is something that I mean,
Abortion
we
rights don't put food on the table either. I hate to reduce it all down to this, but like when you have the privilege, so I'm here in a very nice home studio in a very nice
yeah.
town in Connecticut, and all with all of that comes with, my bills are paid.
Yeah.
I don't have a migrant crisis in my town. I don't have opioids ravaging my town. I have two cars.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. I have the luxury of worrying about democracy
Hmm.
and women's reproductive rights. When your basic needs aren't met, you can't get to that next level. You're not thinking about other people's girls
Hmm.
and their rights, thinking about your family. And can I put gas in the car this week?
Yeah.
I don't believe that we should look down on people who are just thinking about their basic needs. I get that. I have the luxury, and it will be my job to tell you why democracy is important and
Hmm.
women's rights are important. I'll do that.
Yeah.
But I can only do so much if you're not able to buy food. And that's real.
Yeah.
Um, so when Democrats put air quotes over economic grievances and pretend that's a stand-in for racism and sexism and bigotry, that does not work. That does not go well. Trust me, that does not go well.
Right. But their messaging gets crowded out because they're the party that is actually going to help with those things. And Joe Biden, if they like wanted to bring back the what was the child credit thing that helped reduce child poverty for a while that expired.
Uh-huh.
It was that's the kind of thing Democrats do, but that and they would do again, and that's the kind of thing that would help you be able to buy those eggs and help you to be able to get your daughter. But that messaging gets lost because of this just wave of, the trans women are coming for you, and the migrants are at the border, and
No, it gets lost
sadly,
because Democrats have had 4 years to improve the economy. And while we can point to numbers and say the economy has improved,
yeah,
people are not feeling that. They had 4 years to fix the border. Joe Biden's border policy is terrible, was
yeah,
terrible. And it got to the point where he acknowledged that.
Yeah.
Um, and the soft on crime policies are terrible when you're arresting someone for a violent crime for
Mm,
the fifth time and sending them back into the streets so they can do it again and again and again. Don't be surprised when people react to that. So it's
mm,
not that the messaging got lost of all the things that Democrats will do, it's that they didn't
mm.
improve people's lives in a way
Yeah.
that they felt over 4 years. That's what people believe.
Yeah. And I mean, so I guess if it was yeah, if they're voting against that and voting, they want the change candidate, then Trump somehow made himself into the Trump. Well, he was the
He is
change,
the change
and he
candidate.
was the
He's the
only
opposite of
change that was
everything that Joe
available.
Biden believes in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's a bummer. I'm with you. But there are very clear reasons why this happened. It's not a mystery.
Yeah.
It's not a puzzle. It's really clear candidate messaging policy
Well, and
because
because
there's no
Biden, well,
reason
yeah.
a criminal should be elected president.
But I
There's
mean,
no
it goes back
reason.
to Biden's age. If he had stepped down, or if he had been 10 years younger and been able to message the accomplishments that they'd had and communicate them, maybe that would have made a difference. Because normally
If that
incumbents
makes you feel
win.
better, sure.
But if he could have communicated, because he lost his ability to communicate 2 years ago effectively,
Oh, that
and
was
he
a
was,
problem too, for sure.
and so you can't the the communicator in chief moniker of the president. If you can't message what you're doing,
Yeah,
and he didn't because he obviously couldn't,
right.
um, and then it wasn't Kamala's job to message his vice president because you're not supposed to be seen if you're vice president.
Hmm.
So then, and then, yeah.
I mean, that's part of it, but
No, I hear what you're saying as well. Like
okay.
if people's, people's perception, it's just insane because well, it's just there is a line I think where the constant hammering of your life is shit, which is what Republicans have been saying,
Yeah,
and then even when there are factors which indicate no things are getting we're shit and are getting better,
yeah.
and this and the fact that they couldn't hammer away the fact this is where Trump left us and this is where we got you to, we're going to finish
Hmm.
the job. I never
Yeah.
really heard that consistently portrayed
No,
either.
nope.
Um, and that seems, well, and we see it here. The amnesia over COVID is a psychosis, a national psychosis problem that's going to be analyzed, I'm sure, for years. I mean, I see it in
Yeah.
stand up comedy. You can't do jokes about COVID. People are like, oh,
Really?
no, it seems boring and like people don't want to hear it. People have just
Oh,
gone,
that's
COVID didn't
interesting.
happen. It's like,
Yeah.
remember when we were stockpiling toilet paper? People are like, oh, that was so blah. It was so low.
Who
I don't
wants to
want to
go
talk
back
about it.
there? Yeah. Oh,
Well,
that's
because
interesting.
it was a worldwide trauma, and people tend to cover up trauma.
That's so true.
Um,
Hmm.
Speaking of trauma, let's look at the upcoming Trump administration. I'm
Okay.
beginning to think now. I don't know where you're at on the whole, how far you've leaned into various, the use of the fascist word, or if you've ever accidentally called Trump Hitler purposely. But it seems like one of the things that could qualify someone to be in the Trump administration now is that at some point in the past, you either said he was a Nazi, he was America's Hitler, or he was a fascist. Do you think that's a requirement to be one of his nominees? Because I think every single one of them has said that at some point now.
Including his vice president.
Yep.
Listen, there was a time where everyone correctly diagnosed Trump, right?
Yeah.
And um, but I think a lot of people saw his return and rise to power again as inevitable. And so a lot of people did what they thought they had to do
Hmm.
to get back in his good graces, because that's where you want to be. Just ask Joe and
Yeah.
Mika.
Well, and it worked for JD Vance. He's the fucking vice president elect.
Trump doesn't have a very long memory. Whatever you said last is what he'll remember. And so
Hmm.
JD Vance went out, and JD Vance did this brilliantly. I don't like him,
Yeah.
but brilliantly said, I was wrong about Trump. And I watched what he did, and I changed my mind, and I came around, and I believed what the media was telling me. I mean, this
Yeah.
is like a brilliant dodge for what you accurately believed and said.
Yeah.
And by the way, said it sitting next to me at CNN. Like there was a time he was on CNN with me. Um, he said it and believed it. He was right, but he did what he had to do. And that's what you're seeing virtually everyone in the Republican Party do.
I mean, it's just so. I mean, when they go, "Oh, the left wing are obsessed in calling Trump a fascist," I'm like, no, everyone around
Republicans
him
did it.
called him a
Yeah.
fascist.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I, well, I can. I've got it from 2015. I was calling him a fascist back then. I mean, I still remember the rally. I don't know if you remember this, but there was one of his rallies in 2015 where he asked the people in the rally to raise their hands if they
Yeah.
support him. Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Crazy. Yes.
I mean,
He's 100% a fascist. 100%. Now, is he organized and smart enough
that's the
to
thing.
like organize a fascist uprising? No. But he definitely would love to be a Viktor Orban
Yeah,
or a Vladimir Putin and have that kind of power. He would love it. Sees nothing wrong with it.
because the people who are able to deliver the kind of fascism that I think some of these people genuinely want,
Yeah.
they don't want, they don't want America to be a diverse democracy of, of people with emerging rights and that kind of thing. The savvy people like that, like I would say, I would put Bill Barr in that category. I don't think Bill Barr is going to those kind of effective manipulators of the system, where he did what he did with the Mueller report and the other things that he was able to do. He's not running to come back into this administration, is he? And that's why you're
No.
seeing Trump bring in the dipshits like
Yeah.
Matt Gaetz, who's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, how long do you think Pete? How do you say his last name?
Hegseth.
Hextray? Is
I
he
know
going
him
to
too.
last?
Um,
I mean,
well, I said early, Matt Gaetz was never going to get confirmed.
yeah,
I don't think Pete Hegseth is going to get confirmed either. Um, I'm more worried about like RFK Jr.
yes,
at HHS than I am Pete. Um, like Matt Gaetz and RFK Jr. were the most dangerous um appointments I thought, nominees I thought. So I'm glad to be rid of Gates. I don't think Pete will make it. And I don't, this is what I can't understand. I know Pete. I know Pete a very long time. I know all of his scandals, and there's more.
but
I don't get what, like, none of this was going to see the light of day had he just stayed at Fox News.
these
I
people, do they
don't
get
know why
caught up in it
people,
and think,
yeah. Well, it's hubris and it's, I can beat it and people aren't going to care. No, that only works for Trump. People don't
yep,
get it. That only works for Trump. It doesn't work for everyone else. And people also need to remember the Senate is not the House. The
mm,
Senate, senators tend to think very highly of themselves and they think about their legacies
yeah,
more than House members do because House members are up every 2 years and they come in and
mm,
out. And senators, they feel like their legacy is written in ink, whereas House members are more like pencil. So you had, I heard upwards of 30 senators on the right who
yeah,
were not going to confirm Matt Gaetz. That's crazy. And they want to support Trump,
oh yeah.
but there are lines they won't cross, and I think Pete's going to be too hard for them too. But yeah, I mean, it's such a circus from like Dr. Oz. I'm hearing Dan Bongino will go to
Oh yeah.
Secret Service, like another Fox. Hey, if I had played my cards right, Eric, and stayed at Fox, I could be Secretary of State right now. All it
Well, I
takes
mean,
is a
it's not.
Fox contract, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's yeah. If you can get in trouble for a monopoly of Fox controlling the government, um, but I mean, so if you know stories about some of these guys, I mean, I
Mhm.
guess I don't. I mean, as a journalist, then, I mean, how does that? How do you? How does that work? I mean, do you think more will come out because if it's known in the journalistic community, people are because I know you need to present something like that with not just innuendo and rumor, but
Well,
with
there's stuff I know not as a journalist, but
yeah,
I know as a friend. Um, that would not be my job to reveal.
mm,
Some of it is, and I have.
yeah,
Some of what you're hearing on the news is because I have revealed it.
mm, okay,
Um, but there will also be for all of these FBI like background checks as part of any confirmation process.
well, I thought Trump was saying he wasn't going to push for,
But
or
the
he was going to
Senate
say don't do them.
has advise and consent. The Senate decides, not Donald Trump. The Senate decides
Mm,
what information they want. So the Senate is going to get all of this
yeah,
information. They're going to get it all. again, which is why, like, if you're RFK Jr., why do you expose yourself to
I mean,
all the stories coming out? And same with
this,
Gates and Pete. And why? Why? It's like I asked this of Andy Cohen, runs Bravo,
mm,
of all the housewives. You know you've got skeletons in your closet. You are criming. You are committing crimes.
yeah.
Why invite cameras into your home? It's hubris. It's fame. It's the allure of fame and power.
Well, they're in their own bubble, I suppose, because if they're, because I mean, this is one of the things I was going to ask you about, and I think it feeds into this, is that, of course, because partly because California counts votes so fucking slow,
Yeah.
it looks like the mandate angle that Trump is claiming to have, he's now won with the smallest margin since George W. Bush and Al Gore, who obviously lost
Mhm.
the popular vote. So, um, so I mean, or the winning margin, however you want to say it, it's a very,
Mhm.
very narrow margin that Trump has won by. But that red wave is diminishing. They didn't make progress in the House. They won in
Mhm.
easy Senate races, um, and so they maybe in the heady days, even a week ago, of the red wave, Trump thought he was invincible and could push all of these nut jobs through. But
Probably.
now
Yeah.
reality is sort of settling in,
Yeah.
and the reality of these people running the biggest organizations in the world. I
Right.
mean, how the fuck? I mean, how are you going to let Tulsi Gabbard
Yeah.
on national intelligence? And the Senate sees the intelligence, don't they? They know what's going on in
Yes.
the real world.
She
So,
does not have a lot of friends in the Senate. And listen, a lot of these might face difficulty.
yeah.
Um, Tulsi, I've because I cover Syria and work a lot in um humanitarian spaces for Syria. I know a lot about Tulsi and her pro-Assad propaganda, which is
Yeah.
painful,
Mm.
deeply painful to me personally. But I'm hopeful that there are enough senators who are also, and they're very well aware of her Putin and Assad apologism. They're very aware of it. Um, you know, there's a lot of Putin apologism in the Republican Party now,
Mm-hmm.
which worries
Yeah.
me. So she might get through, but she's deeply concerning too. I mean, there's not a pick I have liked besides Marco Rubio to state, Sean Duffy to transportation. Um, and
He's
I can understand Homan to where did he go? DHS,
Sean
immigration czar,
McGee.
border czar. I can
Oh, right.
understand that pick too, but he has relevant experience.
Is he the one saying
Um,
that he'll invade, he'll pull the army into blue cities that try and stop him from taking
yeah, I don't know
weapons
where
there?
that's coming from because I don't believe that that will happen.
But
I don't believe that'll happen,
anything
but
can happen.
you'd never know with
Um,
Trump, but I don't believe
yeah.
that that'll
But Marco
happen.
Rubio is a normal pick for state. And I
He's
wonder if they
super
picked,
normal. He has
if
a
he,
ton of foreign policy experience, whether
but
you
is,
agree with him or not, does that's beside the point.
yeah.
He has a ton of relevant experience and qualifications. I'm happy
Is
with
he,
that. That's a big position.
is he been chosen to open up the Senate seat for a Lara Trump, or I've
Yeah.
heard Matt Gaetz might be put into the Senate, which I cannot
Yeah,
stand.
I know.
Ron DeSantis isn't going to do that, is he?
Ron DeSantis doesn't like Matt Gaetz either, so he's not going to do that. But yeah, all of these appointments, like Elise Stefanik leaving the House, I mean, you've got a lot of open
She's
seats
she's
that
she's on the
apparently
normal
Trump is just not
spectrum.
worried about.
Yeah. I mean, Elise is on the kind of normal spectrum. She's sort of a traditional politician, even though she's gone Trumpy.
She's
She's
super
not.
gross. But she is a normal politician. Yeah, you're right. No, she's super gross. The trajectory of her turn to Trump has been gross. But I actually kind of like that he's relegated her to like the UN, which I don't like the UN. The UN's pointless to me. When you're letting Russia vote on Russia policy, like please. Um,
Yeah,
but
but
I kind
Trump
of
needs
like that
some
he's
repeat.
like, you can go over to this little
Yeah,
insignificant, irrelevant post.
it
Um,
worked. It worked out well for Nikki Haley to be
it
UN
worked out.
ambassador.
No, actually, it insulates a person from Trump
Mm,
world because you have nothing to do with like domestic policy at the UN. Nothing, nothing.
yeah,
Nikki Haley was irrelevant
yeah.
in Trump world, and that saved her actually from being sort of painted by Trump. So that, Elise will enjoy that as well.
I'm aware of our time. I knew this was going to happen because
Okay.
it's fascinating perspective, and because especially I think because of what you did with Battleground is putting you in there,
Yeah,
was
it was
really
really eye-opening for me as a
mm,
journalist as
and
well. I
got you
loved
did it get you out of the bubble?
out of the cable news bubble, yeah, and out of the Northeast where we don't matter in elections. No, it was great. I really learned a lot. It was the best way I've ever covered an election. It felt like the most honest and accurate way I've ever
Mm.
covered an election.
Well, and that's also because you had me on the show.
And we had you on the show. I loved that.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So
That was
because
so fun. Yeah.
we haven't because Democrats abroad really did a lot of work, more work than I've ever seen them do, and I'm waiting to see the numbers to see if
You brought
our
this
numbers
issue
go
to
up.
me. I had not even thought about how many people living abroad could vote and
It's huge.
whether or not that was an important voting block. I had never thought of it. You really brought that issue up to me. And then we hit that a couple times over the course of Battleground with you once, but with a couple other guests too.
Yeah, I mean, the advocacy there is there, and the organization and Republicans abroad overseas are they're not organized, they're not an actual part of the official parties.
Right.
So Democrats abroad is official.
Yeah.
Republicans overseas is a private LLC company, which is the most
Right.
Republican thing ever.
Well, this is
Um,
why I couldn't go and do promotion for them, right? Like
yeah.
I couldn't promote it because yeah.
Um, before I'm conscious of times, but I know
Okay.
you've actually doing something outside of the political bubble, which is your new
Yes.
podcast. So I want to hear
Yeah.
about that. Are there subjects other than politics? I didn't realize this.
Exactly. Exactly. I have to remind people, like, remember your life before politics took it over? I don't either, but we had one. Um, yeah, the podcast is called Off the Cup. It's at iHeart, but you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. And it's an interview show. So I'm interviewing very famous people
Hmm.
about their life. But the point of it for me is to create a space where during that conversation, mental health could come up naturally and
Hmm.
normally and
Okay.
organically. Because that's what I want. I want people to be able to talk about mental health in normal situations, not in forced situations. So I didn't want to
Hmm.
do a mental health podcast because I'm
Yeah.
not a mental health professional. But I've had some struggles with my mental health. I suffer from severe anxiety. I'm in therapy. I'm on medication. I had a nervous breakdown 4 years ago. Um, and I've been working on it. And so I want to talk about it. So I
Hmm.
have these celebrities on, from Huey Lewis to Josh Gad. Um, so many. We've done so many now. Um, to talk about their lives. And over the course of that conversation, a challenge will inevitably come up and we'll talk about how they faced that
Hmm.
or a loss or some confusing time in their life. Like it all comes up eventually.
Yeah.
And so I've loved it. It is an escape from politics and the news. We do not talk about politics on this podcast. We talk about movies and careers and families and love. And it's fun, but it's also really, really enriching and fulfilling. So I've loved
Yeah.
it.
Oh, that's brilliant. Definitely.
Yeah.
We'll have it in the description and everything so people can check that out as well.
Oh, good. I
And
hope so. It's really
and
great
and
distraction.
and otherwise, so Battleground is finished. So are you back with
Yeah.
doing spots on CNN primarily, or what else?
Yeah,
What are you?
I've still at CNN.
Yeah.
You can find me there. I also have a column if people are interested in reading. That's nationally syndicated. I know you can't get the Daily News over there, but it's also in
But yeah,
Chicago Sun-Times and other places.
yeah. You can
So
pay
I'm
for it
still
through
very busy,
PBS.
but sad to see Battleground go. It was really fun.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely fun to be on, and it definitely,
Yeah,
breaking through that I think is important, and that's the kind of journalism that we need to see, because obviously we people need to find a common place to get information so they can make common
exactly.
decisions in a
Yeah.
democracy. That's kind
Yep.
of the point.
Very
Well,
important.
thank you for coming back on, and we'll hopefully see you again and catch up at some other point. Maybe for a happy midterm. Well, before the midterms next, but that'll be a happier election for us at least. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
So there we go. SE Cupp. Really interesting. Challenge some of my perspectives on why Kamala lost. She's very much in the camp of it was the economy, and there was very little with the messaging that the Democrats had that they could do. Um, the social issues, which I think pushed it over the edge, she's less keen on. And we didn't really get to talk about the way that Republicans use woke as a cudgel to say, well, the left is always banging on about woke, so now let me bang on about woke for the next hour, which is what they do. But still really interesting, especially because of the show that she did, Battleground, which you can still watch. It's on YouTube as well if you want to go back, and if you really want to geek out on pre-election coverage, do check out her podcast Off the Cup, and of course her column, which comes out regularly. And she's a good follow on Twitter. I'm trying to bring her over to Blue Sky, where the revolution will begin. And that's it for this week. So thank you to Mark, the producer, as always, for putting stuff together. Thank you to Essie for giving her time. Thank you to you, dear listener. Please subscribe and review and like and all that shit. Thank you very, very much. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.